This is Rob Tebbutt for ID Boxing. Delighted, as always, to be joined by Adam Smith. We're here in Manchester at the Joe Joyce Joseph-Parker press conference. Adam, how are you?
I'm very good, thank you, Rob. How are you? Another big fight, another good fight. The autumn and winter period looks very strong across all the platforms. And yeah, if they can get Fury-Joshua over the line, we know we've got Eubank and Ben coming up, and we've got a few tasty shows ourselves to announce in the coming days, as well as the Clarissa Shields, Savannah Marshall, obviously the lift and shift to October the 15th. So yeah, so much coming up for fight fans.
We'll come on to sort of any other business later on in the interview, but let's talk about Joyce versus Parker. You mentioned there we mentioned off camera, broadcasters working together, you've got promoters, I've got Lou DiBella's here, and you've got a bit of everything on this card. Good for the sport to see promoters putting aside politics and kind of petty squabbling and putting on a great fight for the fans.
It was great to see Frank Smith, Dimitri Salita, most of Top Rank's employees and everyone around us for the week that never happened, of course, Shields and Marshall. I think it's fantastic. You know, George mentioned it here, Lou DiBella and Jake Paul, and obviously Ben Shalom for the big fight. I think it's great that promoters are beginning to work together for the good of the fighters and the good of the fans and the customers out there. So Joe Parker's one of our fighters, obviously recent signing, and yeah, I'm up today to give him a little bit of support, but also to give the show some support as well, because it's a great fight, and we love great fights. It's a 50-50. Okay, Joe Joyce probably starts a slight favourite, but it's a fight that can go many ways, and underneath the Tyson Furies, Oleksandr Usyks and Anthony Joshua's lie these two, and that's why all the marbles are on the line. Daniel Dubois out there as well, and we know Deontay Wilder's coming up soon, Andy Ruiz recently. There's so much happening in the heavyweight world, but this is a fantastic fight happening on our shores. Joe Parker is pretty much a Brit. I mean, he's obviously huge back in New Zealand, but he's adopted here, part of the Fury camp. It's his fourth fight in Manchester. He's got a great record here. We love working with him. He's such a gentleman, as is Joe Joyce. Both great guys, both great fighters, and a wonderful time to make this one happen.
You've mentioned there about it being a 50-50 fight. Another one of the kind of I say buzz phrases, but one of the things that we've been hearing across this week is that it was a fight that neither man really needed to take. Joe Joyce is kind of holding a lofty position in the WBO, as is Joseph Parker. With that being said, how dangerous of a fight is this for Joseph Parker?
And also both with different broadcasters, so it really didn't have to happen. But Joseph Parker wanted that fight. Joe Joyce always wanted it. And I spoke to George Warren in the sort of middle of it all, and I wasn't sure it was actually going to happen. But I'm really glad it has, even though it hasn't landed on Sky. I think it's really good for the sport. And the promoters working together, and if Joseph Parker wins, then we'll get the rematch. And I think there's more of that lies ahead when the time's right for the promoters and broadcasters to work like that. Obviously, we're all waiting for the Fury-Joshua announcement, and that's down to the broadcasters of BT and DAZN. And if it was us, obviously Anthony's now with DAZN, so it's a different scenario. But if it was us, I'd like to think that we could sit down and work things out, like Ben's done very sensibly here. Not easy. David Higgins, Ben Shalom, George Warren, Frank Warren, a lot of people involved in it, but really good that this one's happening. And I believe George and Eddie have had a few conversations, and I'd like to catch up with George in a minute about that. So yeah, I just think it's really good for the sport, and that's the main thing. The main thing is that boxing is back in the headlines. The heavyweight division is huge. We had a fantastic fight, obviously, with Oleksandr Usyk and Anthony Joshua out in Saudi. We had that one. We might not have the one in December, but we'll all be around it. And I think it's a really good and healthy place for the sport we love to be in going forward into 2023 and beyond. And this is a very important one with the interim version of the WBO title. And it is a word, as George said up there, that people don't like. They want to hear world champion and world title. But obviously we know who the world champions are, Tyson Fury and Oleksandr Usyk. We know the business that lies ahead there, whether it's Joshua or straight into the undisputed unification. And for these two, they're going to play their part. The winner of this goes on to fight for a WBO version of the world title, something that Joseph Parker has had before. He's only 30, and we believe he can come again and become a two-time heavyweight champion. But I also like Joe Joyce, and I've always had a lot of time for Joe Joyce. I think he gets unfairly criticised criticised actually on a possible lack of boxing technique, which I think is really peculiar, seeing as he was a really good amateur, and he's amassed this unbeaten record against very good fighters from the word go when he fought Ian Lewinson. And I think Joe Joyce is a really, really difficult night's work for anybody. Whether he can get to the Usyk and Fury level, we wait and see. But he's got to get past Joyce-Parker. And Joyce-Parker's been rejuvenated under Andy Lee. He's looking really good. He's sounding good. The speed is there. I think this could be an awkward night for Joe Joyce. I think it's going to be very, very tight.
You mentioned Fury-Joshua there. You've also mentioned the fact that Tyson Fury is exclusive to BT Sport. Anthony Joshua now, of course, exclusive to DAZN. What would Sky's involvement be? Would you have any involvement? Would there be a way for Sky to be involved in that, similar to Fury versus White, which, of course, was BT Sport box office but available on Sky?
Who knows? I mean, this sport is slightly crazy. You know, when we had an opportunity to have the rights for or bid for the rights for Usyk and Joshua, we went for it. So you know, we're always looking to put the biggest and best fights on Sky Sports box office, as we have done, as you know, Rob, over the last 2 or 3 decades. We can't have everyone, but obviously, you know, BT sits on our platform, so. And there is a relationship now with Ben and George just developing, even if it's only embryonic and maybe a one-off, or maybe they'll go again. So little things like this can help. And obviously the other thing is we're independent. You know, Sky Sports News and our social and digital, you know, huge sort of viewing possibilities that we have, huge numbers that we do. Obviously we want to promote what we have on Sky, but we also want to look at the whole boxing world. I noticed that Katie Taylor was leading our digital coverage yesterday, the announcement of her fight at the end of October. That's on DAZN, and underneath it was Clarissa Shields and Savannah Marshall's rescheduled for October 15th, which obviously is much bigger business for us, but I think it's important for us. And I talk to Joe Markowski often, and I talk to Eddie and Frank, and I talk to George, and I think it's really important that, okay, we've all got our business and our agendas, but the more that we can be open to working together when it suits all the parties, the better. And I think there's a lot of evidence of that at the moment.
Adam, you're a boxing man, taking your broadcaster hat off for one moment. Anthony Joshua has lost consecutive bouts to Oleksandr Usyk. We saw what happened in the ring after the Oleksandr Usyk rematch in Dubai, quite unsavoury scenes at times. Are you surprised that he seems to be kind of on the verge of boxing Tyson Fury for the, well, not the undisputed, of course, the WBC heavyweight title?
I've known Anthony for a very long time. I'm not surprised one little bit. He's extremely competitive. He's always wanted to fight the best. I think if he'd steered his own career maybe without Eddie and Freddie, he would have fought Tyson Fury 3 or 4 times by now, Deontay Wilder and everyone. Obviously, there's businesses and there's political divides and broadcast commitments and things that make it tough. And of course Eddie's got his job and how to deliver the best for Anthony Joshua, so is obviously Freddie Cunningham and the team, and Tyson Fury's got Bob Arum, Frank Warren and everyone around him. So they're always going to take their different paths until it's right for both fighters. Is it the right time now for Anthony Joshua to take on Tyson Fury? It's a good question. I think there's 2 ways of looking at it. One is, after he put everything in and realised he came up just short against Oleksandr Usyk for the 2nd time, but boxed terrifically and did himself proud. Maybe he needed a rest. Maybe he needs rehabilitation fights up to that level again. That's one way of looking at it. The other way of looking at it is, and really you got to be sitting next to AJ on a constant basis, which I'm not, but people like KD and his close team are. And I think that he, as a competitor, will want the challenge. He'll be an underdog. He'll see he's got nothing to lose. 60-40 of a very big pot is, I think, a really good offer from Tyson and a really good one for Anthony. And I think he wants this fight to happen. And you know what? He's got nothing to lose. He's not got that pressure on. People aren't going to expect him to, probably, most people won't expect him to beat Tyson Fury. He and his camp and the team, and there'll be his fans that do. But there'll be a lot of people that feel, obviously now, after 2 defeats, that it will be Tyson Fury's fight to lose. Do you know what? It could be a tougher fight than people think. Styles make fights. Usyk was a southpaw, very, very cagey, difficult, and obviously a smaller man. And it was a tricky style for AJ to fathom. But he's always wanted to fight Tyson Fury. Tyson Fury, in my opinion, is the best. He's not only the biggest and the one that's unbeaten and proved himself, but he's also elusive and very difficult to fight himself. We know that. So it's going to be tough for AJ. But I think that this is the sort of challenge that he will absolutely relish. relish. So I'm hoping that it happens, because you want to see the big fights happen. It was, rumoured 2 years ago, wasn't it? And obviously Deontay Wilder and Shelley Finkel came in and they put the trilogy in place. But absolutely, when a fight can happen, why not? And if it's good, you go again, and suddenly another trilogy could make. And what's the worst that could happen? AJ loses for a third time, but he's lost at an elite level. Again, it won't be the end, and people will have a lot of respect for him for giving it a shot. As far as how he is mentally, physically recovering from what happened against Oleksandr Usyk, maybe those first few hours, even couple of weeks were tough for him, and maybe you'd have said just take a bit of time. It seems now he's back in the gym and he wants to fight. Well, he's the one that's getting in the ring, Rod, not you and I. And if he wants it, maybe he's going to get his wish, because I'm hoping that it'll get announced soon.
You mentioned there when the fight was first discussed a couple of years ago. Is it still as big a fight now as it would have been a couple of years ago for the undisputed titles?
I think it's a huge fight. I think it's the biggest fight in British boxing for a long, long time, maybe in British boxing history. I mean, you've got to go right back, and what are we, nearly 30 years on from Lewis and Bruno. We've had huge fights here, of course, and the likes of Froch and Groves and those, but back to the Ben Eubank days. And I mean, obviously AJ and Klitschko is a huge, huge fight at Wembley, and for many that will be the sort of pinnacle of AJ so far. And it was just a phenomenal fight that sort of followed. But I think in terms of we all love a British rivalry, and we've all waited for this fight. And I think Pacquiao and Mayweather was 5 years too late. Maybe this is a year too late, but it's not too late. It's definitively not. Both of them are right up there. Even though AJ's lost, he's lost twice to Oleksandr Usyk, who's a phenomenon. Tyson Fury's, plays with retirement, but we all know he's in the form of his life. I think that this is the time to make it, and I think that they've got to get on and announce it quickly so it can become as big as maybe it would have come a couple of years ago. But I think, ultimately, do you want all the undisputed treasure on the line? In a perfect world, yes. We're not in a perfect world, we're in the world of boxing. And I say make this fight, because it's still absolutely enormous.
Final one on the heavyweights, you mentioned his name there, the imperious Oleksandr Usyk, pound for pound top fighter in the world, unified heavyweight champion. Also, currently without a broadcast deal. I'm sure Sky Sports are very interested in having the unified heavyweight champion of the world on Sky. He has, of course, headlined many a Sky pay-per-view in the past. I'm sure, Adam, as a boxing man and a broadcaster, you'd love to see Oleksandr Usyk back on Sky Sports, whatever happens next for him.
I'd love to see Oleksandr Usyk back on Sky Sports. As you said, we've got a great relationship with him. We had Anthony Joshua from the start of his professional career. We've had every single one of his fights, so it'd be a bit weird, won't it, if this Fury fight happens and it's on BT and DAZN. But as far as Usyk goes, yes, we've enjoyed a wonderful relationship with Alex and Aegis and the whole team. They're a great bunch of people. Oleksandr is a fantastic human being, let alone a wonderful fighter with his incredible amateur record, his unification at cruiserweight, now at heavyweight. I mean, it's unreal what he's done. So yeah, he's definitely high on the shopping list. We'd love to work with him again, but of course, I'm sure every other broadcaster wants to work with Oleksandr Usyk, and he'll have some big offers coming his way. I think first and foremost, he's gone back to Ukraine, and that's the most important thing for him after what's been a horrible, horrendous year for his wonderful country. And we wish him well, and we hope that he's back with his family, and things obviously improve in his beautiful country. And that's the most important thing for him. We know he's taking a few weeks out, and I expect to see him back in 2024, maybe early, and 2023, and maybe early. And let's hope that we're broadcasting Oleksandr Usyk's fights, because I'd love to be working with him again. And Aegis knows that, Alex knows that, and Oleksandr knows that himself too.
Actually did an interview today where he talked about the potential bout with Canelo Alvarez. Did that float your boat, Adam?
Wow. Listen, boxing's a strange business, isn't it? Eubank Ben. I mean, who'd have thought some of these things would happen, and in reality they are. So you can never count anything out in boxing. Let's see where we move. But first and foremost, I want to see the Fury and Joshua fight either made or not made. I think we need a decision within the next week, 2 weeks max, because it is 8-9 weeks away. And I think to get the proper build up for that, you need a great window. And if not, then we want to see what AJ does next, and whether Oleksandr and Tyson can get together, as people are saying, in the spring. So let's just wait. I'm not involved in those conversations, but I'm going to go have a word with George, see how he's getting on.
Well, before you do that, you've mentioned it here, Clarissa Shields and Savannah Marshall. We were all there. I was stood with you at the press conference when the terrible news came in about the Queen passing away. Great news that it's been rescheduled. We've been able to get that big event back on for October the 15th. Must be, first of all, a relief, and also you must be excited to see them finally put that rivalry to bed.
It's been a very strange time, hasn't it, for the nation in the last couple of weeks? Unprecedented, and Monday was a very strange, weird, and incredibly sort of emotional day, wasn't it? You know, in many ways, pride of what sort of show we could put on as a country and a nation, but sadness to lose someone as iconic as the Queen. Yeah, when that news came through, I think I said to you straight away that I thought it was in doubt whether the show would carry on. I think Robert Smith did exactly the right thing for the board by making sure that the news of the nation overrode the importance of sport, and we all took a time just to reflect. But yeah, it's brilliant that Boxer have worked so hard to make sure that we've got the O2 again, work with our scheduling people at Sky, and B, to make sure every single one of those fighters is coming back, because you know how difficult these shows are to put on, especially as we've been talking about getting the different promoters together. But everyone's coming back. We've got a full show again. It's an entire lift and shift, and hopefully we'll get an even bigger and better build-up, because people like when something's postponed. People are itching to see it actually happen, and the fighters more than anyone. So I was very disappointed for the fighters. It's really tough when you're working for that one moment and you haven't even weighed in and to get that news. But they were brilliant, so professional. They understood it. They got it. They've gone back. They've re-engaged with training now, and they're starting to ramp it up again, and October the 15th will be a huge day. And I think it's right that we've given it a few weeks, because this is a celebration of women's boxing. And I think if it had happened a couple of days after the passing of the Queen, we wouldn't have had that. And so I think for everybody it's better. It's been rescheduled, and we've got green for go. So October 15th is going to be a special night in our calendar.
Look forward to it. Adam Smith, always a pleasure. Thanks very much for speaking to ID Boxing. Let's catch up soon.
Cheers, Rob.